Hello YouTube. Right, today I'm going to show you how I do the basket weave carve on this gunstock. Some of you may remember me showing you this gunstock a while back, and it's the one with the carved bird on it. And this gunstock's for a TX200 air rifle, which I just need to get it finished because it's been it's been under the bench for just so long now. So today I'm going to show you how I do this basket weave pattern carving. Just get that up to the pattern. You can see that it looks really nice. So I'm just going to show you today how I do that, how I set it out, and how I actually carve it. I've sort of made a bit of progress with this side of the stock now, and I've let that piece of spalted sycamore into there, which matches the butt piece of the rifle, and I've still got the other spalted piece of sycamore to fit onto the front there. That will be fitted onto there and shaped, and like the other side, but I'll do that last because it's not important at the moment. The most important thing is to get this basket weave done. So I've still got a little bit of carving to do on this side. You can just see that there. I'm just going to gouge that out a little bit deeper so it kind of looks cool like a hawk, like a hawk's head, because I think I just said I'm going to sell this stock now because I'm actually going to sell the rifle that I made it for, so this stock is surplus to requirements. So I will either sell the stock with the rifle in it or just sell the stock. Anyway, that's irrelevant for now. So what I'm going to do is show you how I do this basket weave carving. I'll just zoom in a bit on that and tip that up to there somehow. That's better. Okay, stick that rag under there. Probably zoomed in a bit too much there. Yeah, okay, that's better. Right, to get that pattern which I've just drawn on, what I did, I made a pattern on tracing paper which I took directly from the other side. I mean, initially I did draw this pattern out and carved it onto the other side, so I've just made a copy of that, and all I did with this was I taped it, I drew a line down there, just finger gauged it with a pencil like that, and then I took my marking gauge with the point on and I actually cut a line. Just went over that a few times and cut a line into there, and that gives me my reference line, which is the top of the carving, and then I lined that up, making sure that that point was level with the carving on the other side, and I just tape that on, and then it's with some tracing paper at the back of it. Obviously probably quicker ways of doing this, but I like doing it old school. And then all I had to do was just go over these lines with a pen. I use a pen because the pen marks the wood better than a pencil will, and you end up with really thick lines using a pencil. So I just took a little straight edge, well, a little steel rule, and I just lined them lines up, and I just used my pen and I just marked each and every line and transferred it onto the stock, which is what you see there now. So, and this is where the work begins now. Now, I've found out the hard way how to do this, and the breakthrough on this really was, can you see those little patches there, them little tiny squares that actually go in between the basket weave? Well, they believe it or not, are a nightmare, and a guy suggested, because they're actually a hole that splits the four weaves up, so a guy suggested I get it on the pillar drill and I drill them out. So I've got I think it's a 2.5 or 3 mil drill bit, and I actually drill each one of them holes out and it makes it so much easier to carve this. So before I do that, what I have to do, I've already started on this actually, I have to get my little knife, and it's like a carving knife. Somebody made this, and some guy had made these and gave them to a friend of mine, but he couldn't use them. But any sort of blade would do really, because it's just a nice little carving tool. And what I have to do now is I have to cut each of them lines like that. The first cut is kind of gentle, the second one's a bit harder, and the third one you can really put some force into it and get some depth. You have to do it this way, because if you try and do your first cut hard and deep, you'll end up running past, and you'll probably end up running down the stock. So the first cut is literally nice and gentle, the second one a little bit deeper, and the third one's probably going in about 3 millimeters. And it's important when you're cutting these that you actually start bang on that line and finish bang on that line, because when you come to start chip carving all this, if you haven't done that, it makes it very, very awkward. And I've also found that the best way to do this, and certainly the fastest way to do this, is to just go right down the stock, doing each and every line in the same direction. Because some of this grain is actually harder than it is in other places. But if you're constantly going round and turning the stock round to do, you know, say that one, you're going to spend most of your time just turning the stock and revolving the stock. So it's better to just work along the stock like that in all them sections. And when you've got all them lines cut, turn the stock around and then just cut the other side. So when I've done that, when I've cut all these lines in there, and I've also cut that line, I've already done that one, so I've already put a 2 or 3 mil cut along there, which you do that first because it really helps, because it stops you running out with that, because your tool will always kind of stop at that line, then that cut line, and it stops you running down onto your stock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go right down the stock on each side, just cutting them lines into there, and then I will come back and I'll show you how I just drill them little holes out, and then I will show you how I start the carving. And I've cut all the little lines, and I've cut down, I think I said I've cut down to a depth of about 2 millimeters or so, and I've had taken my drill bit, put it in the drill press, and I've drilled with a 2 mil drill bit. I've drilled down about 3 millimeters. I've just estimated that because I can't remember what depth I drilled the other side at, but I may have gone a bit too deep, but it doesn't matter. So the next stage is to start carving the actual basket weave now. And like I said, it's so much easier to do this if you drill them holes, because what happens is, if you don't drill the holes, as you're going in with the carvings, the wood chips out in them corners, and you end up chasing the chips so they don't break across the grain. But I'll show you what I mean now. I'll just zoom in on that. So I'll get the camera in on a bit of it, which should be alright there, is it? Where are we? There. Okay. Yeah. So we'll start on this bit there. Now what you've got to do is you've just got to kind of, you do kind of get it into your head, the orientation on this, and that is that weave goes under, comes out, that weaves over the top. So what you do, you've got to send them 2 weaves in there, and what you're aiming to do is literally just round that piece of timber over so it looks like it's flowing as a weave would. So you kind of just got to go in from the centre down to the bottom of your cut on each side of there. Just keep the chips out. And go into that one. Again, you only have to go really about 2mm deep with this. And you go over into that one. Then you come back and go into this one. Now, as I said before, I just work with the grain, or I'll do one row of weaves all the way through because it's just so much easier. And what you got to do this is just very gently just round them tops over like so. Oh, a bit dusty in here. Number 2, you've just got to round them tops over. You don't want to take anything off the centre because obviously that's the face of your timber. So the deeper you go with that, the deeper you're going to have to go with that, so you end up cutting too far into the timber. Now at some stage where I've drilled these holes, you have to have a very small chisel to clean them out. And I've got it somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is. I actually ground one of my chisels down so that I could get it in that slot, so the chisel's about 2mm wide. Anyway, we're not at that stage yet, so when we get there I will find that chisel. Now on this weave I've cut an extra 2 lines in there, which you probably saw on the other side, which I think really brings the weave out. So there's another 2 lines kind of cut in there, and I'm just trying to think how I did that. Now I'm pretty sure what I did, I just ran the chisel over like that and just split it roughly into thirds. Then I went in with a very small V-gouge, a very narrow V-gouge. It's either that one or that one, it's that one. So then I went in with the V-gouge on them cuts, like that. And if you think this is fiddly, I'm telling you, it is fiddly. It takes a long time to do, but you do get into a pattern and a route and a swing with it, and you know, you think it's going to take forever to do this, but you know, in no time you sort of start seeing results. And I'm going to have to actually turn this over just to see, because I think I actually rounded them over as well, but all this will actually be sanded, believe it or not, as well. And I think I did just take the corners off that there. You got to watch this because the grain is running that way, and it's going to chip out if you're not careful. So you have to keep constantly changing the angle of cut with your tools. That, I think that's about done there, that little bit. But I don't carve this weave like this. As I say, what I will do now is I will do all of them, each one of them, all the way down, right down the stock, and then I'll start working from that direction and do all of them. So that's kind of what I'm going to do now. So what I will do is I'll come back to this in, let's say, an hour, and see how much I've got done. Okay, so it's been about an hour and I've just about got all the weaves cut in, and I've also started just squaring some of these holes up. Just zoom in on that. what I'm going to do now is just carry on squaring out these holes. Too much? Out there? Yeah, I'm just going to carry on squaring out these little holes, and this is the tool I'm using. As I say, it's just a little chisel that I've ground down to a point, and it's about 1/8 of an inch wide maybe. Put a sharp edge on it, and I'm just going into these little drill holes, as you can see there, and I'm just cleaning them out and squaring them up, because once that's done, well, certainly that part of the carving's done anyway. So I'm just going to go right along now and square all them holes up, and the next task is to cut these little lines cut these weaves into thirds. Okay, I'll see how long it takes me to do that. Right, so I've spent the last couple of hours cutting the little separators in them weaves. I've squared out most of the holes, and what I've got to do now is sand up the weaves. I wouldn't normally sand them up, but because it's on a gunstock and it's going to get handled, and you know them edges are quite sharp because they've just come off the tool, so I'm going to have to sand everything up so nothing gets caught, or if you rub some clothes against it then it's not chipping the bits of wood away. So when it's all sanded out, it should be perfectly smooth to the touch, and it will also take the oil finish better as well, and I think it will look nicer. So what I've got to do now, I'll just show you what I'm going to sand it up with. So I make these little sanding fingers, and all I make them out of is a piece of, this is fiberglass sheet, and you could use plastic or anything I suppose, but I just happen to have this, and what I do, I stick double-sided tape on it, and I stick some sandpaper on the double-sided tape. In this case it's 180 grit, and then all I do, I just get my gilbows and I just cut little strips off that so I can use them as sanding fingers. And as these fingers get worn at the ends, I literally just snip the ends off, and I've got a fresh piece of sandpaper. So I'll just go in and just show you what I'm going to do now. And this is such a laborious task, but it is worth it. You know, it is worth doing because it really does give a nice effect. So all these little fingers that have been split into thirds, I'm now going to have to go every single one and sand them, and it's a case of sanding that edge, sanding that, and you wouldn't think this really would make much difference to the appearance, but it does. Sanding that side and then sanding that side. Now they're now rounded over, and they're not going to snag on anything. So I'm going to have to go right down the stock now and sand each one of them like that. Then when I've done that, I'll probably have another hour fiddling around and cleaning out these holes and doing various other bits and pieces to it. Yeah, it sure is a laborious task, this. And when I finish all that sanding, what I'll do is I'll probably go over the whole thing with something like a Scotch-Brite pad. I can't use wire wool because the wire wool will snag into all these little bits of carving. So I use something like Scotch-Brite and just sand it all so it's really smooth, and so we don't get any snagging on it, and also it's going to be easier to apply the oil finish when you've got a smooth surface and it's not all kind of jagged and sharp. So I'm going to carry on now. I'm going to sand all these up, and I'll see you in about a week. So I've had about an hour sanding up the basket weave, and you can probably see the difference between the bit I've sanded and the bit I haven't sanded, because the sanded bit seems to really jump out of the carving, which is what you want when you're doing a carving, because you want to add as much depth and dimension as you can, rather than, because these flat surfaces as the finish there are just a flat surface. As soon as you start rounding things over, they start to really jump off the piece. Well, that's where I'm up to. I've got about half of it sanded, and there's still some little bits and pieces to do, and they're the parts that are sanded, and you can just see where they change to the bits that aren't sanded there, with them flat tops and just the lines cut in them. So this sanding is really tedious, but you know, it's worthwhile doing. And I've got some little bits and pieces to clean up there at the bottom, like these. They're very difficult to get into, but you can get into them. So I'm going to carry on doing all the sanding now and just cleaning up as much as I can, and then I'm going to go over it all with some Scotch-Brite pad, and then I'm going to do the little tiny stipple carving around the outside of that as a border. And really the little stipple border is just to clean this edge up, because I've not been too careful with my chisel and my tools when I've been cutting these, because you can just see that edge there at the bottom. You just see it there. There's a few little chips and there's a few little tool marks in it, and I could get rid of them, but I just wanted to define the carving better by putting a border around it. So I'll get on to do that next. Right, I've sanded all the little weaves now, basket weaves, and I'll probably spend another hour on this before I've finished cleaning the little holes up and filing and messing about. But what I've just done as well, I've just cut them two lines there in the top, and to form that little border, and separated them with this outer border, which I'm going to stipple. And I've simply done that top with the little marking gauge with the two pins set, and I've just run that along the back, just kept running it along until it cut a deepish trench, and then the space in between I've just rounded that over. So I'm just going to stipple this, and I'm using a little Dremel type burl, and this is a little handheld tool, rotary tool with a little tiny diamond burl in it. And all I'm going to do to stipple this is simply just dot that like that, and just keep stippling along. And I'm not going very deep with that. So I'm not going very deep because all I want to do is just texture the surface. Might be able to see it better if I tip the stock over there. You can just see that now. I just want to put a bit of texture into the surface of that, and it's a nice separator between the weave and the plain grain of the stock. So I'm just going to crack on, carry on and do all that now. Then where I am at the back is, there's a little tiny bit of carving to do on there. There's a couple of kind of little flutes that go on the back of that, so I'll get on with them in a second. I finished the carving, I've finished the sanding, I've carved that border around the basket weave, and I've done the two little dings at the back there, two little sort of petals. I've cut out the finger thumb hole in the stock, so create that nice shape on it. I finished stippling out the grip, shaped and sanded that, and I've also put a bit of oil on the back of the stock. Just put a light coat of oil on just to see what the timber was going to look like. I think it's quite nice, that. See that? This stock will go a lot darker. I think I may have already said that at some point when all the oil is applied. Right, well I've just epoxied on that 4-end piece on the gun stock, so I'm kind of going to have to wait for that to dry now and set, so it'll be tomorrow before I can just sand that up, shape it, and then fit the action into the top of the stock, and then it will just be a matter of applying the oil. It's probably going to have, I don't know, 10-12 coats of oil, something like that, to finish it off, and it should give it a lovely deep colour and a sort of a semi-matte finish. So hope you've enjoyed that, guys. I'm just going to finish this up now. I'm about to do, well, I've already started doing another video on a gun stock I'm making, so what I'll do, when I finish this gun stock, the oiling is going to take a while. It's probably going to take me, you know, maybe a week, 2 weeks to oil this stock up. You know, a coat of oil a day, let it dry, next day another coat, sanding down between. So I will put the finished stock on the front of the next video, and then I'll show you how I let it's actually a gun stock for an S410 air rifle, so I'll show you how I let the action into the gun stock and how I proceed with the carving and shaping. Right guys, that's it for now. Please subscribe and like if you like, and I'll see you all in the next vid. Bye for now.